Picture a man standing alone in a storage unit on a cold Sunday morning. He's not there to throw anything away. He is there because 3 weeks ago his father passed away, and somewhere behind old furniture and forgotten boxes sits a 1978 Ford F-100 pickup truck that has not moved in over 2 decades. The tires are flat. The paint has faded to almost nothing. Rust has crept along the wheel arches like a slow tide. Most people would call a junkyard. This man calls it a reason to keep going. He runs his hand along the hood the way someone might touch a photograph, carefully, deliberately, as if pressing too hard might cause something precious to disappear. In that single gesture, an entire psychological world is revealed, because what this man is about to do is not really about a truck. It is about grief, identity, love, and the deeply human need to hold on to something when everything else feels like it is slipping away. People who restore cars their parents once owned occupy a very specific and emotionally rich corner of automotive culture. They are not restoring machines, they are restoring memories. They are not chasing horsepower or show trophies. They are chasing a feeling that time has taken from them, the feeling of being close to someone who is no longer here, or the feeling of a childhood that existed before life became complicated. The behavior itself can look identical to any other restoration from the outside. They source parts, sand bodywork, rebuild carburetors, rewire electrical systems. They spend months and sometimes years in garages under fluorescent lights, making slow and deliberate progress. But the internal experience is entirely different. Every component they touch carries emotional weight. Every original bolt they manage to save feels like a small victory against time. Every scratch they choose not to remove, because they remember exactly how it got there, is a quiet act of devotion. These individuals often describe the project not as something they chose, but as something that chose them. The car was simply there, waiting. Walking away from it never felt like a real option. Psychologists who study grief and attachment behavior have identified a pattern that explains much of what drives this particular kind of restoration. It connects to a concept called continuing bonds theory, which challenges the older idea that healthy grieving means letting go. Research developed over the past 3 decades suggests that maintaining a symbolic connection to a deceased loved one is not a sign of psychological difficulty. It is actually a healthy and adaptive way to process loss. The car becomes what psychologists call a linking object. It is a physical bridge between the person grieving and the person they have lost. By interacting with the car, working on it, being inside it, the restorer maintains a felt sense of closeness. The emotional connection does not disappear because the person is gone. It relocates. It finds a new home inside the object that carries the strongest memories. This also connects to a well-documented personality trait, high emotional depth combined with openness to experience. People drawn to this kind of restoration tend to feel things intensely. They are not the type to pack a parent's belongings into boxes and move on without ceremony. They need a process. They need something their hands can do while their heart works through something their mind cannot fully articulate. There is a woman named Alina from outside of Cincinnati who spent 3 years restoring her mother's 1969 Chevrolet Camaro. Her mother had purchased the car as a young woman before she was married, and it sat in the family garage for most of Alina's childhood, covered in a tarpaulin, always promised to be restored someday. That someday never came. Her mother passed away from illness when Alina was 34, and the Camaro passed to her. Alina had never worked on a car before in her life. She took classes at a community college. She joined online forums. She made countless mistakes and had to redo work she thought was finished, but she kept going, and when asked why, she said something that stopped the conversation entirely. She said that every hour she spent in the garage was an hour she felt like her mother was still in the room with her, not in a supernatural sense, but in the way that doing something deeply connected to another person keeps them present in your thoughts and your heart. The car was her mother's dream. Completing it felt like giving her mother something she never got to have. Alina finished the restoration and drove the Camaro to her mother's grave on what would have been her mother's 62nd birthday. She sat in the driver's seat for a long time before starting the engine. The psychological dimensions of this behavior extend far beyond grief alone. For many people, the parent's car represents something larger than the individual relationship. It represents an entire era of their life that has closed. The family home before the divorce, the summers before everything became serious, the feeling of sitting in the backseat as a child with no real responsibilities, and a sense that the person in the driver's seat would always be there. Nostalgia research conducted over the past 2 decades has fundamentally shifted how psychologists understand this emotion. It was once considered a mild form of depression, a romanticization of the past indicating an inability to embrace the present. Modern research tells a very different story. Nostalgia functions as a psychological resource. It strengthens the sense of self, provides emotional warmth during difficulty, and increases a person's sense of meaning in their current life. The car restoration becomes a structured, intentional act of nostalgia. It is not passive daydreaming. It is active, physical engagement with memory. The restorer is not just thinking about the past. They are touching it, smelling it, rebuilding it with their own hands. This physical dimension amplifies the psychological effect enormously. There is also a quiet identity reconstruction happening beneath the surface. Losing a parent triggers questions that were previously invisible. Who am I outside of being their child? What parts of them live in me? What do I carry forward? The Restoration Project provides a structured way to explore these questions without having to ask them out loud. What is particularly striking about this corner of car culture is the community that has formed around it, often quietly and without much public attention. There are online forums and social media groups dedicated specifically to people restoring vehicles that belong to family members. The conversations in these spaces are unlike anything found in standard automotive communities. They are softer, more vulnerable. People share photographs not just of engine bays and bodywork progress, but of old family photos showing the car in its original life, a parent washing it in a driveway, a grandparent sitting on the hood. These communities understand something the wider world does not always appreciate, that a car can carry an entire emotional history, and that the process of restoring it deserves to be witnessed by people who understand what is actually happening beneath the surface of the mechanical work. Walk into any garage where this kind of restoration is underway, and the atmosphere is immediately different. There is a quality of quiet reverence to it. Nothing is discarded without consideration. People who have completed their own family restorations often become informal mentors, not just for technical knowledge, but for the emotional terrain of the work. They understand the strange combination of grief and joy that comes with every hour spent in that garage. These communities remind their members that they are not alone in what they are carrying. There is something profound happening in garages all around the world that the outside eye rarely notices. In a culture that moves fast and encourages people to update, replace, and move on, some individuals are making a quiet and determined choice to slow down, to reach backward, to say that something which was loved deserves to be loved again. The person who restores a parent's car is engaged in one of the oldest human acts available to us. They are honoring where they came from. They are saying that the people who shaped them mattered, that their dreams mattered, that the objects connected to them are worth more than their mechanical value. They are refusing to let time be the only thing that wins. When that engine turns over for the first time after years of silence, something happens that is very difficult to explain to someone who has not experienced it. It is not just a mechanical success. It is a conversation with the past. It is proof that love can take a physical form, expressed through patience and persistence, and grease-covered hands working in a cold garage on a Sunday morning. The car that once carried a family forward through time is now carrying something else. It is carrying memory. It is carrying grief transformed into something beautiful. It is carrying the quiet message that the people we lose do not disappear entirely. They live in what we choose to preserve. And sometimes they live in the rumble of an old engine finally coming back to life.